I turned my style guide into an AI designer by taking this simple, plain language style guide with image examples and logos. This agent, which is also very simple, will now create graphics that are always consistent with my brand. So even if I ask it, create a YouTube cover image, it's going to use this visual style and get results that always adhere to the style guide's aesthetic. So for instance, we have a few different aesthetics here, and our agent knows how to play with each of them. All right, let me show you how. In our last video, we spent some time carefully crafting the exact words that we wanted to use in the style guide. We read through it, we got rid of everything that we don't like, and everything that's left is consistent with what we actually want. Now I'm going to turn this into an agent that can use this visual style to create consistent assets for our business. So to do that, I'm going to go to Workspace and Agents. I'm going to come up here to Create Agent, and let's call this guy Designer. You know, there's people that like to give their agents names, like instead of designer, they might call them Paul. I recommend not doing that because every word that you use matters, and however we use this agent, whether for our own sake or inside of a workflow or something else, it's going to be a lot clearer either to you or the AI what this agent does if you give it a clear name. Cool, let's choose an LLM model. GPT 5.4, so that's just ChatGPT. I think I'm going to choose Gemini. This agent is going to create art for us. And to do that, we want to give it some tools. Now, by default, it'll be able to have access to all of these tools, and it can search through and find what it wants. So you don't actually have to define any tools here. But I only want it to use the specific image models, Nano Banana 2 and Nano Banana 2 Edit. So I'm going to check those off. And that's going to make it so our agent can only use these two models. And that's all I need to do over here. So now to create this agent, all I have to do is write this document, and this will become the agent system message. If you're new to building agents, the system message or system prompt is kind of like the starting context that every chat is going to have whenever you talk to this agent. So let me show you what I mean by that. If I enter a system prompt like "you are blue," and now I go to my test chat over here and I say, "What are you?" then this agent knows that it is blue. And even if I start a new conversation, you'll notice here it says that it's a large language model built by Google. That's because we set it to the Gemini LLM model. So now even if I start a new conversation here and I ask it again, "What are you?" then it's still going to say, "I am blue." So the system prompt means that this agent is forever blue. On the other hand, if we say, "You are an idiot sandwich," and now we ask it, "What are you?" Oh my god, I can't believe it said that. All right, let's see if the tool access works. So I'm just going to tell it, "Okay, idiot sandwich, generate an image of yourself." And let's see where this takes us. Okay, and it's answered back, and apparently it created the image, but it didn't show it to us. So let's ask it to show us the image. "Show me the image, idiot sandwich." There we go. Amazing. So now that we've had this exchange back and forth, it would be nice if every time it created an image for us, it just knew to actually show us the image. So we can put that information into the system prompt. And I'll just say, "Every time you create an image, remember to show me the image in your response." There we go. Now let's up the ante a little bit. Create an image of Gordon Ramsay yelling at you, asking what you are. I actually have no idea if it'll do this because this is a real person, and some of the image generators don't like to generate real people. Oh, we're doing great, important work here. And I can indeed confirm that Nano Banana will indeed generate Gordon Ramsay. All right, guys, quit messing around. This is serious work we're doing. All right, so let's start writing this for real. Now, if we actually wanted to create an agent that was an idiot sandwich, a cleaner way to do it would be like this. Right, so I'm defining the role headline here. And by the way, to do that, all I did was type a couple hash marks and it automatically creates a header for me. So for instance, this one will say rules. All right, so back to this first header here, role. This is a very common thing that people do in their system prompts. They'll give it a role. They'll say, "You are a blank, you are a designer," or whatever. The thing is, you don't actually have to do this. I mean, this can be a useful thing to do, but only if you know how to use it, right? The reason that you would create a role like this is because you want it to act in a way that it wouldn't act naturally. So you see, by assigning it the role of idiot sandwich, it's changed the overall color of its personality. So for instance, you can see here it says, "I have taken note, chef," right? It's responding with a certain levity. It understands that we're having fun. So it's talking to me in a way that's appropriate for its role. But if I were to say something like, you are a designer. Do you see how this doesn't actually add any information that it needs? Because it already has access to these tools and it can already use them, right? So just telling it that it's a designer doesn't actually change its behavior at all, other than the fact that it might start talking to you like a designer might talk to you. But that's not actually more useful than its normal responses. However, where this can be useful is if we give it a more specific role, right? We can say, you are a designer for Apple, or we can give it a specific name. Like for instance, I just Googled just now, give me a famous web designer, and it gave me Ethan Marcotte. I have no idea who this is, but he is apparently a famous web designer. Right, let me actually show you what I mean here. So if I remove this entirely and I start a new conversation and I say, create an image of a homepage for an AI app called Eidolons. And I'll send that, and it's thinking, all right, it's calling some tools. All right, and here's the result. Okay, keep in mind, I did not feed it my style guide yet, so it has no idea what my style looks like. I mentioned in the last video that for some reason, AI just really likes purple and blue. Here's a very good example of that. Okay, so this is kind of a default. This is just Gemini figuring out what an AI app homepage should look like. And now if I give it this role and I say, you are this specific person, and now I copy this and I start a brand new conversation, and I should probably fix my grammar here. And now I paste in this prompt and I send it. So now it's creating this image, but it's doing it as this particular web designer here. And here's the result. This looks a little bit too similar to me. I asked the Google again and it gave me a new designer. This time I asked it for one with a very distinct visual style. This other person that I've never heard of is named Anton Reponen. So let's try this one more time. So I'll start a new conversation, paste this in, and wait for it to respond. And this actually still looks like the default. So apparently this keyword is not enough to make it really commit to the role. So I'm just going to add a little bit more specificity here. And I'm going to say, every design you create must be in Anton Reponen's style. By the way, if Anton Reponen happens to watch this video, I apologize for using you as my example. You were just the first person to come up on Google. So now that we've added some specificity, let's try this one more time. And here it goes. There we go. So in this case, it just took a little extra encouragement to make Gemini believe that it was indeed Anton Reponen, which is kind of funny because it was very eager to believe that it was an idiot sandwich with very little prompting. So this is a pretty nice hack if there's someone that you want to emulate or a style that you want to create that already exists out in the world. For me right now, I don't want to do that because I just spent all of last episode meticulously crafting a style guide. All right, so now here's the thing. Because I'm not trying to do something like this, I don't need to give it a role at all. So I'm going to remove that and create a new header. And this one's just going to say, read first. And here I'm going to use a wiki link and I'm going to reference my visual style right here. Okay, now Eidolons will actually append this document to the end of the system prompt. So just by having this wiki link in here, my agent is going to be able to see my style. So now if I do this again and I create a new chat and I send my prompt, let's see how it turns out this time. Now I think just having this style guide will be enough. If not, then I can add another rule to let it know that it actually has to go by the style guide. And yeah, you can see here, this looks very different from the default ones that I was making me earlier. I don't necessarily love this website design, but it looks like it was at least trying to follow the style guide. I think I do want to add this rule though, because I think we might get a better result if I do. So I'm going to say, adhere to the style guide in every image you create. And I also just want to add, for anything that might require a logo, use the logo from the style guide. Now, to a human, something like this would be obvious. To AI, it is not. Sometimes you have to be super explicit with AI. And I'm actually afraid that it's still not going to know what I mean by this. So I'm going to tell it, I'm going to switch to my bullets here. I'll tell it, you can do this by using the edit tool and tell it to use the logo as a reference. So now, if I copy this one more time and I go to a new conversation, paste this in, and if I send this off, and here's the result, it is absolutely hideous. But it does successfully adhere to the style guide aesthetic, and it even managed to put the logo in there. So we can see, even with this really simple agent definition here, we've now got an agent that we can chat to that will, by default, use the style from our style guide and use our logo. So this is a success, but I'm not terribly happy with the actual design of this website. It's actually kind of a disaster. So there's a few reasons that might be true. One reason could just be the image model itself. It could be that its training steers it in the direction of super complex designs. But it's interesting because it actually uses the word minimal up here. So apparently it thinks that this is minimal. All right, so it could just be the image model's training, but let's see if we put anything in the context that might have given us this complex result like this. I don't see anything here, so let's check our style guide. All right, this all seems fine. So here I have the 3 possible aesthetics. The only obvious thing that jumps out is that we use this word engineering, and engineering can be a trigger word for complexity. So it's possible that just Nano Banana is naturally overly complex, and it's also possible that this word engineering in our context is making it more complex than it needs to be. And yes, this is actually how these models work. But that's actually okay because we can balance it out. What I'm going to do here is just add a few points to each of these aesthetics like this. Let me make this grammatically better. Here we go. And I'm just going to add this same exact thing on each of these so that we can create a consistent theme of simplicity. All right, now just because I know that Nano Banana's default is actually to over-engineer everything, I'm going to actually echo this message of simplicity in the agent prompt itself. I'm going to say, emphasize simplicity and minimalism. So basically I'm telling it to build simplicity and minimalism into the prompt. So now I want to try this again and see if my little additions change anything. So paste this in and boom. All right, and here it goes. All right, and here's the result, and this is already looking a lot better. I don't necessarily love the artwork here, but we can see it's definitely starting to take shape. It used our logo, it used the aesthetics from our style guide, and it gave us a much more minimalistic result. Maybe it needs a little work, but it's definitely coming along. So look at what we've done here. You remember in the last video, we crafted this style guide, where we tell it exactly point for point how we want it to look with examples and our logo. All right, and based on this style guide, we now have an agent that can just create images on the fly. And we can feel confident that those images are going to adhere to our aesthetics for our brand. So even though this document is really, really simple, and even though our style guide is also pretty simple, we start stacking these simple documents on top of each other, and we can start to see the real power of plain language agentic systems. But we are still just scratching the surface here. And from here on out, it's going to get even better. So make sure you're subscribed. And also do me a favor, hit that like button. All right, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.